Today, I'll be counting down what I believe to be the top 10 greatest comedy movies ever made. And I don't necessarily mean these are the funniest movies ever made, but I think that they're the best crafted, well-written movies in the comedy genre. So, kicking off the list at number 10 is The Big Lebowski. And this is a movie I had to see multiple times to really understand. I certainly liked it the first time I saw it, but I didn't understand why it was even considered a comedy, let alone one of the greatest comedies ever made. It was just a really weird, character-focused story about nothing in particular, and I didn't really get it. But on repeat viewings, I was cracking up at almost every line that was spoken. I think it just takes an initial viewing of this movie to get used to the characters and the social landscape and to forget about focusing on any kind of plot. The plot is just there because it has to be. This movie is really just about the characters and their interactions between each other and how ridiculous they are. It can also be looked on as a social satire for the era it was made in. Zombieland is one of the most rewatchable movies I've ever seen. While it's probably not the most famous zombie comedy, I believe it's the best. It follows four main characters on their journey through the apocalypsed America to an amusement park. The characters are all given great backstories which enhance their comedic moments, and its influence is even palpable just 10 years after it was released. Its style has influenced many movies since, and I cannot wait for the sequel to come out later this year. So Office Space is probably the second funniest movie I've ever seen in my life. I really enjoy movies that try and depict the dry, boring moments that really fill what most of life is. And this movie pulls it off with flying colors. It really draws out the pains of the workplace and plays on them in the funniest of ways, such as beating and destroying that stupid office printer that never does what you want it to do. Gary Cole, who plays the boss, is easily the standout of the movie. Like, every single line he delivers cracks me up so much. Every single line is just gold. His delivery is so wholly original and wholly his, and his dry, selfish, lazy behavior are traits that many relate to their own bosses. There are many other workplace stereotypes that make this movie work so well, such as the restaurant industry. All around, it's a hilarious movie with great messages. I highly recommend you guys check this one out. Airplane is the funniest movie I've ever seen. It's easily the best parody movie ever made as well. The amount of gags and one-liners that actually work in this movie is crazy. There are so many different forms of comedy within Airplane 2. And in the opposite vein of Office Space, this one tries to be as ludicrous as possible. And it works so well. It's brought about so many famous lines. This movie is extremely quotable, one of the most famous being, "Surely you can't be serious." I am serious, and don't call me Shirley. It will hopefully crack generations up for years to come with its wide range of humor. Noises Off is probably the most complex as far as its writing goes on this list. Michael Caine plays a play director who is struggling to direct his incompetent actors through the first act of their play at their final rehearsal. The audience at home learns all the lines the actors are supposed to say and sort of the plot of the play. The second act of the movie is the first act of the play again, but this time they have a theater audience. The movie watching audience at home sees how poorly the cast is delivering due to their drama backstage. The third act of the movie is the first act of the play yet again, and how the cast is performing even worse. The jokes just keep playing and building off each other in such a complex way. You just really have to see it to understand. I'm very impressed someone was able to write such a comedy. How could you make a best comedies list without including Dr. Strangelove? It's usually cited as the best political or war comedy ever made, and for good reason. Its sarcasm is completely off the charts, and if you watch this movie not knowing it's just a satire, you'll probably see a completely different movie. It has great messages about war, politics, and our society wrapped up inside. And on top of this, Peter Sellers delivers an unforgettable performance with 3 different roles in the movie, with the title character Dr. Strangelove being one of them. Comedies were much different 100 years ago, so it's important to keep that in context when comparing the landscape of film to movies today. The Gold Rush was released in the era of silent films. They couldn't even rely on sound effects. And while they did have intertitles with dialogue on them, they were very basic. So silent movies solely relied on visual storytelling to get the job done. And Charlie Chaplin was the master at communicating comedy through this silent medium to audiences at the time. The Gold Rush is about Charlie Chaplin's character going in search for gold and the antics he gets wrapped up in along the way. The visual humor is some of the best that Chaplin has ever produced, with his usual lighthearted and heartwarming story that creates such a comedic atmosphere. Moonrise Kingdom is Wes Anderson's best movie. It follows a preteen boy and girl who fall in love and decide to run away together and live in the woods. Bill Murray, Edward Norton, and Bruce Willis all do a great job playing their dry-humored characters clearly written by Wes Anderson. But the two young actors, Jared Gilman and Kara Hayward, who fill the title roles, really steal the show with their performances. It's such a fun adventure movie that just ramps up the laughs the longer the film goes on, and it features one of the most realistic young romance stories ever put to screen, with the backdrop of Wes Anderson's gorgeous color palette. Ferris Bueller's Day Off is now a classic in cinema history. John Hughes had already proven he could direct teenage movies with 16 Candles and The Breakfast Club, but he really shines with the fourth wall breaking Ferris Bueller. The character, along with several scenes throughout the film, are now just iconic. He is the envy of what teens wish they could be. Everyone loves him and everything just comes so easy for him. Which is what makes this movie so fun to watch, when a select few characters see through his lies and try to destroy the perfect life he has built. It's such an entertaining movie that'll keep a smile on your face all throughout, but also with great relatable messages for teens. I know this number one pick is going to be controversial, but I believe that Napoleon Dynamite is the greatest comedy ever made. And let me reiterate, I don't think it's the funniest movie ever made, just the best comedy movie ever made. Although I do think it's my number 3 pick for funniest. I just think this movie is so genius in the way it is written. It's so wholly original, and I don't even mean by the plot or the lack thereof. There just hadn't been a movie with such characters before. There had certainly been similar movies, a lot of them directed by the Coen brothers, but nothing quite like Napoleon Dynamite. Its synthy 80s score, the characters, the costumes, the random lines, "Your mom goes to college," the scenes that do nothing to progress the story, all make this movie so great. This is one of the most original movies ever made in the era of blockbuster filmmaking. Its style has been copied many times since, but no film has quite been able to crack its tongue-in-cheek humor the way that Napoleon Dynamite did. John Heder, thank you for bringing this outlandishly boring and nerdy character to life for us to enjoy. Well guys, those are what I think to be the best comedy movies ever made. I'm sure there's going to be many disagreements, so let me know what you guys think are the best comedies ever made in the comments below. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for my next review.